In the silent whispers of history, where the boundary between life and death blurs, there exist rituals that defy the understanding of the modern soul. Today, we delve into the arcane and solemn world of death rituals, where the human quest for immortality, honor, or redemption takes forms both fascinating and macabre. Sokushinbutsu, the self-mummification of Buddhist monks in Japan, emerges from the misty mountains of Yamagata Prefecture. This practice, which reached its zenith between the 11th and 19th centuries, saw monks embark on a grueling journey of fasting and meditation, ultimately leading to their death and mummification while seated in the lotus position. The process, intended to achieve enlightenment and save others by absorbing their suffering, required a decade or more of preparation. Venture now into the chilling bogs of northern Europe, where the naturally preserved bodies of men, women, and children have been discovered, some dating back to 8,000 before the Common Era. These bog bodies, with skin tanned and preserved by the acidic waters, offer a haunting glimpse into past rites, possibly of sacrificial victims offered to the gods of yore. Across the sea in the rural heartlands of Britain, another peculiar ritual known as sin-eating was practiced up until the 19th century. Sin-eaters, often social outcasts, were called upon to consume bread and ale placed over the deceased, symbolically ingesting their sins to ensure their peaceful passage to the afterlife. The last recorded sin-eater, a man named Richard Munslow, died in 1906 in Shropshire, England. Can one imagine the weight of a community's sins, devoured in the hope of salvation? Faced with the inevitability of death, Socrates once mused, "To fear death, my friends, is only to think ourselves wise without being wise, for it is to think that we know what we do not know." As we delve into the rituals that have guided souls to the afterlife, we confront our own perceptions of death, challenging us to ponder what lies beyond the veil of mortality. Join us as we explore these thresholds between the living and the eternal, the places where humanity has sought to make peace with the inevitable end. Welcome to the Diary of Julius Caesar. Embracing eternity, the haunting practice of Sokushinbutsu in Japan. In the misty mountains of Japan, a haunting and esoteric practice once captured the devotion and imagination of a select group of Buddhist monks. Known as Sokushinbutsu, this ascetic ritual involved the deliberate and painstaking process of self-mummification, a journey that would transform these holy men into enduring symbols of enlightenment and spiritual preservation. As the Japanese poet Matsuo Basho once wrote, "The journey itself is my home." And for the monks who embarked upon this path, their final voyage was a testament to their unwavering commitment to the Buddhist faith. The practice of Sokushinbutsu emerged during the Heian period, 794–1185, in Japan, a time when Buddhism flourished and ascetic practices gained prominence. The monks who undertook this journey believed that by mummifying themselves alive, they could transcend the cycle of death and rebirth, attaining a state of eternal meditation and becoming a living embodiment of the Buddha. One of the earliest recorded instances of Sokushinbutsu was that of the monk Kukai, also known as Kobo Daishi, who is said to have entered a state of deep meditation in 835 at the age of 61, never to awaken again. His mummified body was discovered in 921 on Mount Koya, where it remains enshrined to this day. The process of self-mummification was arduous and spanned over a decade, divided into distinct phases, each more rigorous than the last. Initially, the monk would adhere to a diet known as mokujikigyo, literally translating to eating a tree. This diet consisted solely of pine needles, resins, and seeds, eliminating all cereals and thereby beginning the body's gradual desiccation. This phase, lasting 1,000 days, was designed to strip away the fat and moisture that contribute to decomposition. Following this, the monk would then embark on an even more extreme diet of bark and roots, further reducing the body's fat and moisture content. Alongside this dietary regimen, the monk would engage in rigorous physical activity to eliminate bodily fat and increase the body's endurance. This second phase, also lasting 1,000 days, prepared the monk for the final and most extreme part of the process. The monk Kukai, founder of Shingon Buddhism, is often quoted for his views on the unity of body and spirit. The body is a vessel of the law. For monks like Tetsumonkai Shonin, this belief was literal. Their bodies became vessels for a higher truth, transcending the decay of death. The culmination of this practice saw the monk enter a stone tomb barely larger than his body, where he would sit in the lotus position, a bamboo tube providing air, and a bell to signal his continued living presence. Once the bell ceased, the air tube was removed and the tomb sealed. In 1829, Tetsumonkai Shonin's silence within the tomb signified his transition, a moment awaited with reverence by those he left behind. The monk's body would remain entombed for another 1,000 days, after which it was exhumed. If the body was found mummified, the monk was revered as a Sokushinbutsu, having achieved a state of eternal enlightenment. If not, the attempt, while not successful, was still honored for its piety and dedication. One of the most famous examples of Sokushinbutsu is that of the monk Tetsumonkai Shonin, who began his journey towards self-mummification in the late 18th century. Born in 1742 in the village of Tsuruoka, Tetsumonkai was a devout follower of the Shingon sect of Buddhism. At the age of 58, he embarked upon the path of Sokushinbutsu, retreating to a small, stone-walled chamber on the sacred Mount Yudono. There, he spent the final years of his life in deep meditation, his body slowly withering away as he consumed only the bare minimum of sustenance. In 1829, after nearly 3 years of this ascetic practice, Tetsumonkai's disciples found him in a state of perfect meditation, his body mummified and preserved for eternity. Today, his remains can be seen at the Nangakuji Temple in Tsuruoka, a testament to his enduring devotion and the power of the Sokushinbutsu ritual. The practice of Sokushinbutsu was not without its dangers and controversies. Many monks who attempted this journey died long before achieving mummification, their bodies ravaged by the harsh ascetic practices and the unforgiving environment of the mountains. Others were lost to wild animals or the elements, their sacrifices forgotten by all but the most devoted followers. Moreover, the act of self-mummification was not officially sanctioned by the Buddhist authorities, who viewed it as an extreme and unorthodox practice. In the words of the Buddhist scholar and monk Kukai, the true path to enlightenment lies not in the preservation of the body, but in the liberation of the mind. Despite these challenges, the legacy of Sokushinbutsu has endured, captivating the imagination of people around the world. The mummified remains of these devoted monks, with their serene expressions and perfectly preserved robes, serve as a haunting reminder of the lengths to which some will go in pursuit of spiritual enlightenment. In the mountains of Yamagata Prefecture, the Temple of Dainichibo houses the mummified bodies of 16 monks who underwent Sokushinbutsu, their faces etched with the serenity and contentment of those who have found eternal peace. As the poet Kobayashi Issa wrote, "In this fleeting world, what is there to hold on to? Only the cherry blossoms, only the moon." Today, the practice of Sokushinbutsu is no longer carried out, having been officially banned by the Japanese government in the late 19th century. Yet, the spirit of these ascetic monks lives on, their stories and sacrifices passed down through the generations as a testament to the enduring power of faith and the human spirit. In the quiet temples and misty mountains of Japan, the memory of Sokushinbutsu endures, a haunting reminder of the lengths to which some will go in pursuit of eternal truth. As the Zen master Dogen once said, "If you cannot find the truth right where you are, where else do you expect to find it?" Echoes of eternity, the haunting towers of silence in Zoroastrian tradition. In the ancient lands of Persia, where the whispers of history mingle with the echoes of the divine, a mysterious and macabre tradition has endured for centuries. The Zoroastrian towers of silence, known as dakhmas, stand as silent sentinels, bearing witness to a practice that has both fascinated and unnerved those who have encountered it. These open-topped towers, exposed to the elements and the relentless gaze of the sun, serve as the final resting place for the departed, where their earthly remains are offered up to the birds of prey in a ritual of purification and transformation. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century, described the Zoroastrian practice of sky burial as a marvel to behold, a testament to the strange and wondrous customs of the East. The origins of the Towers of Silence can be traced back to the teachings of Zoroaster, the enigmatic prophet who founded the ancient religion of Zoroastrianism in the 6th century. Central to Zoroastrian belief is the concept of purity and the idea that the elements of nature, earth, water, fire, and air, must be protected from the pollution of death. In the sacred texts of the Avesta, Zoroaster speaks of the importance of disposing of the dead in a manner that preserves the sanctity of these elements, stating, "The body, when the soul has left it, must not be buried in the earth, nor burned with fire, nor thrown into the water, for it would defile these sacred elements." This belief is further reinforced in the Vendidad, a later Zoroastrian text, which declares, "The Dharma is the place where the body is purified, and the soul is freed from the bonds of the material world." And so, the Towers of Silence were born, a solution to the problem of disposing of the dead without contaminating the world of the living. The earliest known Dharma dates back to the 5th century, located in the ancient city of Pasargadae, in what is now Iran. Over time, these towers spread throughout the Persian Empire, becoming an integral part of Zoroastrian funerary rites and a defining feature of the religious landscape. The Arab traveller Ibn Battuta, visiting Persia in the 14th century, described the Towers of Silence as a strange and fearsome sight, a place where the dead are left to the mercy of the sky and the birds. One of the most famous examples of a Tower of Silence can be found in the city of Yazd, Iran, where the Zoroastrian community has maintained the practice of sky burial for over 1,000 years. The Dharma of Yazd, perched atop a barren hilltop on the outskirts of the city, is an imposing structure, its circular walls rising over 20 feet high and measuring nearly 100 feet in diameter. Within these walls, a series of concentric circles and stone slabs mark the final resting places of the deceased, their bodies laid out in rows to await the arrival of the vultures and other birds of prey. The British explorer Freya Stark, visiting Yazd in the 1930s, described the Dharma as a place of eerie beauty, where the silence of the dead is broken only by the rustling of wings and the cries of the vultures. The ritual of placing the dead within the Tower of Silence is a solemn and sacred affair, steeped in centuries of tradition and symbolism. The body, having been washed and dressed in simple white robes, is carried to the tower by a group of pallbearers, who are themselves considered to be temporarily impure due to their contact with the dead. At the entrance to the tower, the body is laid upon a stone slab facing the sun and left to the mercy of the elements and the birds. The 19th century British diplomat Monier Williams, witnessing a Zoroastrian funeral in India, wrote, "The procession wound its way slowly up the hill, the mourners chanting prayers and hymns as they went. At the top, the body was laid out upon the stone, and the vultures began to gather, circling overhead like a dark and ominous cloud." For Zoroastrians, the vultures and other birds of prey that descend upon the towers are not seen as harbingers of death, but rather as agents of purification, consuming the flesh and leaving behind only the bones. In the words of the Zoroastrian high priest Dastur Kotwal, "The vultures are our partners in the journey of the soul. They cleanse the body of all impurities, leaving it pure and ready for the next stage of existence." This belief is echoed in the words of the Zoroastrian poet Firdausi, who wrote in the 10th century, "The vulture is the messenger of heaven, carrying the soul to the realm of the divine." Yet, despite the deep spiritual significance of the Towers of Silence, the practice of sky burial has not been without its challenges and controversies. In the 20th century, as Zoroastrian communities began to dwindle and the number of vultures in Iran and India declined, the efficacy of the Dharmas came into question. In Mumbai, India, Home to one of the largest Zoroastrian populations in the world, the Tower of Silence, in the neighborhood of Malabar Hill, became a source of tension and debate, as the lack of vultures led to the accumulation of bodies and the threat of disease. The Parsi writer Bapsi Sidhwa, in her novel The Crow-Eaters, describes the plight of the Zoroastrian community in Mumbai, writing, "The vultures were gone, and the dead lay rotting in the towers of silence, a silent testament to the passing of an age." In recent years, some Zoroastrian communities have begun to explore alternative methods of disposing of the dead, such as cremation or burial in cement-lined graves. Yet, for many, the Towers of Silence remain a powerful symbol of their faith and a connection to their ancient past. As the Zoroastrian scholar Kojesta Mistry has written, "The Dakma is not just a place of death, but a place of transition, where the soul leaves the body behind and begins its journey to the next world. And so the Towers of Silence endure, standing tall and silent against the winds of change, a testament to the enduring power of faith and the eternal cycle of life and death." In the words of Zoroaster himself, the soul is immortal, and the body is but a vessel for its journey through the world. Whispers from the depths, the haunting enigma of Europe's bog bodies. In the murky depths of Europe's peat bogs, a haunting mystery has lain dormant for thousands of years. Preserved by the unique chemistry of the bog, the remains of ancient individuals known as bog bodies have captured the imagination of archaeologists, historians, and the public alike. These eerily well-preserved corpses, with their leathery skin, vivid hair, and intricate clothing, provide an unparalleled glimpse into the lives, deaths, and beliefs of Iron Age and early medieval societies. As the renowned Irish poet Seamus Heaney wrote in his collection North, "The bog has kept its secret, the stone its silence. The goddess holds her ground." The phenomenon of bog bodies spans across northern Europe, from Ireland to Denmark, with the majority of discovered remains dating back to the Iron Age, between 500 before the Common Era and 500 in the Common Era. One of the most famous bog bodies is Tolland Man, discovered in 1950 in a peat bog near Silkeborg, Denmark. With his peaceful expression and remarkably preserved features, Tolland Man appears to be merely sleeping, belying the fact that he died over 2,300 years ago. Archaeologists determined that he was hanged with a braided leather cord, possibly as a ritual sacrifice to the gods. Another well-known Danish bog body is Graubel Man, found in 1952, whose contorted facial expression and gaping mouth suggest a more agonizing death. Another notable bog body is Lindo Man, discovered in 1984 in Cheshire, England. Also known as Peat Marsh, a playful nod to his watery grave, Lindo Man met a particularly gruesome end. Analysis of his remains revealed that he had been struck on the head, garroted, and had his throat slit before being cast into the bog. The precision and multiplicity of his injuries suggest that Lindo Man was the victim of a ceremonial killing, perhaps as an offering to the gods or as a punishment for a transgression against his community. The discovery of Lindo Man was a watershed moment in bog body research, as it was the first time that modern forensic techniques were used to study these ancient remains. The bog's unique ability to preserve human remains has provided researchers with an unprecedented opportunity to study the physical characteristics, health, and lifestyles of ancient peoples. For example, the stomach contents of Graubal Man, a bog body from Denmark dating back to the 3rd century, revealed a last meal of porridge made from 60 different types of seeds and grasses. This discovery shed light on the dietary habits and agricultural practices of Iron Age communities in the region. Similarly, the elaborate hairstyles and well-manicured fingernails of Elling Woman, another Danish bog body from the 3rd century, suggest that she was a woman of high social status, challenging preconceived notions of gender roles in prehistoric societies. As the archaeologist P.V. Glob noted in his seminal work, The Bog People, the bog bodies are a unique source of information about our ancestors, their way of life, their beliefs, and their fate. The discovery of bog bodies has also sparked discussions about the religious and ritualistic practices of Iron Age and early medieval communities. Many scholars believe that these individuals were sacrificial victims offered to the gods as part of a complex system of beliefs and superstitions. In his book, The Bog People, Iron Age Man Preserved, Danish archaeologist P.V. Glob argues that bog bodies were consecrated to the goddess of the bog, a divine figure who demanded blood offerings in exchange for the life-giving properties of the peat. This theory is supported by the fact that many bog bodies, such as Winderby Man from Germany, dated to around 100 CE, and Red Frans from the Netherlands, dated to around 220 CE, were found with ropes or other indications of ritualistic killing. This theory is supported by the fact that many bog bodies show signs of ritualistic killing, such as Tolland Man's hanging or the multiple wounds inflicted on Lindo Man. Furthermore, the bogs themselves were likely seen as sacred places, liminal spaces between the world of the living and the realm of the gods. The act of depositing a body in the bog may have been a way of communicating with the divine, a means of securing the favor of the gods or atoning for past misdeeds. The Roman historian Tacitus, writing in the 1st century, described the Germanic tribes' practice of human sacrifice, noting that they believe that the gods are more pleased by such offerings. However, not all bog bodies were the result of ritual sacrifice. Some, like the Winderby girl from Germany, may have been ordinary individuals who died of natural causes or accidents and were simply buried in the bog. Others, such as the Weerdinga men from the Netherlands, may have been casualties of armed conflicts or executions. The bog bodies' diverse range of ages, genders, and causes of death highlights the complexity of Iron Age and early medieval societies, challenging simplistic narratives of barbarism or primitive superstition. As the archaeologist Heather Gill Robinson observed, the bog bodies are not just a curiosity or a macabre spectacle, they are a window into the lives and deaths of real people, with all the complexity and nuance that entails. As modern scientists continue to study these ancient remains, new insights into the lives and deaths of bog bodies are emerging. Recent DNA analysis of YDE Girl, a bog body from the Netherlands, revealed that she was likely a member of a noble family, adding further nuance to our understanding of social hierarchies in prehistoric Europe. Similarly, advanced imaging techniques have allowed researchers to reconstruct the facial features of bog bodies like Osterby Man, giving a human face to these long-dead individuals and fostering a sense of connection with our ancient past. As the historian Karin Sanders wrote in her book Bodies in the Bog, the bog bodies are not just scientific specimens or archaeological artifacts. They are individuals with stories to tell, and it is our responsibility to listen. Faces frozen in time, the haunting legacy of death masks. In the annals of human history, the desire to preserve the likeness of the deceased has been a recurring theme across cultures and centuries. One of the most intriguing and intimate methods of capturing the visage of the dead is through the creation of death masks. These haunting impressions, taken directly from the face of the deceased, offer a unique glimpse into the lives and times of those who have passed on. The Roman historian Polybius, writing in the 2nd century, noted the importance of honoring the deceased. The most valuable thing in life is to be remembered after death. The tradition of creating death masks dates back to ancient civilizations, with the earliest known examples hailing from ancient Egypt. The famous gold mask of Tutankhamun, discovered by Howard Carter in 1925, is perhaps the most well-known example of this practice. The ancient Egyptians believed that preserving the likeness of the deceased was essential for the soul's journey into the afterlife. In the tomb of Khnum Nacht from the 12th dynasty, 1991 to 1802, a plaster death mask was found, showcasing the intricate detail and craftsmanship of the time. In more recent history, death masks gained prominence during the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. These masks were often used as a reference for sculptors and painters tasked with creating lifelike portraits of the deceased. One notable example is the death mask of the Italian poet Dante Alighieri, taken after his death in Ravenna in 1321. This mask served as the basis for numerous portraits and sculptures of the renowned writer, ensuring that his likeness would endure for centuries. Another famous death mask from this era is that of the English King Henry VII, taken upon his death in 1509 at Richmond Palace. The practice of creating death masks reached its zenith in the 18th and 19th centuries, particularly in Europe and the United States. During this time, death masks were not only used for artistic purposes, but also as a means of memorialization and remembrance. Families would often display the death masks of their loved ones in their homes, serving as a tangible connection to those who had passed on. The death mask of the French philosopher Blaise Pascal, taken after his death in Paris in 1662, was cherished by his family and friends as a reminder of his brilliant mind and pious nature. One of the most famous death masks from this period is that of Napoleon Bonaparte, taken shortly after his death in exile on the island of St. Helena in 1821. The mask, which captures the emperor's serene expression in his final moments, has been the subject of much fascination and study. In a letter to his brother Joseph, Napoleon's personal physician, Francesco Antommarchi, described the process of creating the mask. "I took the precaution of having a mold made of his face, which came out perfectly well. I have the honor of sending it to you, knowing that it will be a precious memento for you." The death mask of the French revolutionary leader Maximilien Robespierre, taken after his execution in Paris in 1794, is another striking example from this era. The death mask of Abraham Lincoln, taken by sculptor Clark Mills in Washington, D.C. in 1865, is another notable example from this era. The mask, which captures the president's gaunt and careworn features, serves as a poignant reminder of the toll that the Civil War took on the nation and its leader. In a letter to his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, Mills wrote of the experience, "I have never seen a more perfect face. It was so grand and noble, and yet so sad and tender." The death mask of the American author Edgar Allan Poe, taken after his mysterious death in Baltimore in 1849, has been the subject of much speculation and intrigue. The tradition of creating death masks began to wane in the early 20th century as photography became more widespread and accessible. However, the legacy of these haunting impressions endures, offering a unique and intimate glimpse into the lives and times of those who have gone before us. Today, death masks can be found in museums and private collections around the world, serving as a testament to the enduring power of the human face and the desire to preserve it for posterity. As the American poet Ezra Pound once wrote, "The image is more than an idea. It is a vortex or cluster of fused ideas and is endowed with energy." In the words of the French philosopher Maurice Blanchot, "The mask is the face, and the face is a mask." These words ring true when considering the haunting beauty and historical significance of death masks. They serve as a bridge between the living and the dead, offering a tangible connection to those who have shaped our world and our understanding of what it means to be human. Eternal rest on the battlefield. How the Civil War transformed embalming in America. Amidst the chaos and carnage of the American Civil War, a quiet revolution was taking place behind the front lines. As the conflict raged on, claiming the lives of hundreds of thousands of soldiers, a new practice emerged that would forever change the way Americans mourned their dead. The art of embalming, once a rarely used technique, became a necessity as families sought to bring their fallen loved ones home for proper burial. As the famous poet Walt Whitman, who served as a nurse during the war, wrote, "The real war will never get in the books." The Civil War, fought from 1861 to 1865, was a watershed moment in American history. The unprecedented scale of the conflict, combined with the advent of new technologies like the telegraph and the railroad, meant that news of a soldier's death could reach their family within days. However, the long distances between the battlefields and the soldiers' hometowns presented a daunting challenge. How could a family ensure that their loved one's remains would make it home intact? In 1862, a soldier named James Cathy from North Carolina died in a Union hospital in Philadelphia. His wife, Mary, traveled from their home in Buncombe County to retrieve his body, only to find that it had already been buried in a local cemetery. Enter the embalmers. These skilled practitioners, armed with a knowledge of anatomy and a variety of chemical preservatives, set up shop near the front lines, offering their services to grieving families. One of the most famous embalmers of the Civil War era was Dr. Thomas Holmes, who is often credited with popularizing the practice in the United States. In 1861, Holmes embalmed the body of Colonel Elmer Ellsworth, a friend of President Abraham Lincoln, who was killed in Alexandria, Virginia. Ellsworth's preserved remains were transported to the White House for a funeral service, and the public was amazed at the lifelike appearance of the body. Holmes went on to embalm many other notable figures during the war, including General Stonewall Jackson and General Robert E. Lee. Word of Holmes's success spread quickly, and soon other embalmers were setting up shop near the battlefields. The demand for their services was high, as families were willing to pay a premium to ensure that their loved ones could be buried at home. In a letter to his wife, a Union soldier named John F. Chase wrote, "If I should fall in battle, have my body embalmed and sent home. I don't want to be buried on the battlefield." Another soldier, David Ballinger, wrote to his wife in 1864, "I want you to have my body embalmed and sent home if I should be killed." The process of embalming during the Civil War was a far cry from the modern techniques used today. Embalmers would typically inject a preservative solution, usually containing arsenic or mercury, into the body's arteries. The internal organs would then be removed and replaced with a filling material, such as sawdust or plaster of Paris. The body would be dressed in a suit or uniform and placed in a wooden coffin for transport. One embalmer, Dr. Auguste Renoir, claimed to have embalmed over 1,100 bodies during the war, using a secret formula that he refused to reveal. The rise of embalming during the Civil War had a profound impact on American funeral practices. Prior to the war, most families buried their dead within a day or two of death, and the idea of preserving a body for an extended period was seen as unnatural. However, the necessity of embalming during the war helped to normalize the practice, and it soon became a standard part of the American funeral industry. In 1865, the first professional embalming organization, the National Funeral Directors Association, was founded in Rochester, New York. The legacy of Civil War embalming can still be seen today in the way Americans mourn their dead. The practice of holding a viewing or wake, where friends and family gather to pay their respects to the deceased, has its roots in the Civil War era. The sight of a lifelike, preserved body in a coffin, once a novelty, has become a familiar and comforting presence at American funerals. As the famous funeral director and embalmer George Huntington wrote in his 1883 book, The Principles and Practice of Embalming, the art of embalming has done more to assuage the grief of the bereaved than any other human agency. However, the widespread use of embalming during the Civil War also had its darker side. The chemicals used in the process were highly toxic, and many embalmers suffered from health problems as a result of their exposure. In addition, the high demand for embalming services led to the rise of unscrupulous practitioners who took advantage of grieving families, charging exorbitant fees for shoddy work. In 1865, a New York Times article warned readers of the danger of being imposed upon by unprincipled embalmers. Despite these drawbacks, the impact of the Civil War on embalming practices cannot be overstated. The conflict accelerated the adoption of a practice that would become a cornerstone of the American funeral industry, changing the way we mourn and remember our dead. As Dr. Richard Burr, a prominent embalmer of the era, noted in his memoirs, the Civil War was the making of embalming in this country. It gave the profession a prominence and importance it had never before attained. Eternal bonds, unraveling the haunting tradition of Chinese ghost marriages. In the misty mountains and ancient villages of China, a peculiar and haunting tradition has persisted for centuries, defying the boundaries between life and death. Ghost marriages, a practice where deceased individuals are posthumously united in matrimony, have long been an integral part of Chinese culture, reflecting deeply rooted beliefs about the afterlife and the obligations of the living to their ancestors. As the Chinese philosopher Confucius once said, "The living must honor the dead, and the dead must protect the living." The origins of ghost marriages can be traced back to the Zhou dynasty, 1046–256, when the concept of the afterlife began to take shape in Chinese philosophy. The ancient Chinese believed that the spirit world mirrored the realm of the living, and that the deceased required the same necessities and companionship as they did in life. This belief gave rise to the practice of burying the dead with their possessions, servants, and even their spouses. In the famous tomb of the Lady of Dai, dating back to the Han dynasty, 206–220, archaeologists discovered the remains of a woman buried with her husband, along with a variety of household items and servants, all intended to ensure her comfort in the afterlife. As time passed, the tradition of ghost marriages evolved, becoming a means of uniting two deceased individuals who had never met in life. Families would arrange these posthumous unions for a variety of reasons, ranging from fulfilling the last wishes of the deceased to ensuring the continuation of the family line. In some cases, ghost marriages were even used to appease restless spirits, believed to be causing misfortune or illness among the living. In the Ming Dynasty novel, The Three Sui Quash the Demon's Revolt, the hero, Sui Yangdi, arranges a ghost marriage between his deceased daughter and the spirit of a warrior to secure the latter's allegiance in battle. One of the most famous examples of a ghost marriage in Chinese history is that of the Qing Dynasty Emperor Xuantong, better known as Puyi, the last emperor of China. In 1962, nearly a decade after Puyi's death, his widow, Empress Wanrong, passed away in prison. Despite having been separated for years, the two were posthumously reunited in a ghost marriage ceremony, their ashes interred together in a Beijing cemetery. The epitaph on their tombstone reads, "Here lie the imperial concubine Wen Xiu, the Xuantong emperor, and his wife, the Xuantong Empress Wanrong, reunited in eternal love." The tradition of ghost marriages is not limited to the upper echelons of Chinese society, however. In rural villages across the country, the practice has remained a deeply ingrained part of life for centuries. In the village of Dongbao, located in the rugged mountains of Shaanxi province, ghost marriages are still a common occurrence. Here, the story of Li Zhigang and his deceased bride, Wu Meilin, has become a local legend. Li, a young farmer, had been engaged to Wu for several years when tragedy struck. Wu, who had been working in a factory in the city, was killed in a freak accident, leaving Li devastated. Determined to fulfill his promise to Wu, Li approached her family and proposed a ghost marriage. The two families agreed, and a ceremony was held, complete with a traditional wedding feast and the burning of paper effigies representing the bride and groom. Li's story is not unique. In the nearby village of Yanggao, a similar ghost marriage took place in 2012 between the deceased son of a local official and the corpse of a young woman whose family received a substantial dowry in exchange for their consent. The practice of ghost marriages is not without its darker aspects, however. In recent years, there have been reports of grave robbers in China's Shaanxi and Henan provinces, who specialize in stealing the corpses of young women to sell to families seeking brides for their deceased sons. This grim trade has led to increased security measures at cemeteries and a renewed focus on the ethical implications of ghost marriages. In 2015, the Chinese government officially banned the practice of ghost marriages, citing concerns over the desecration of graves and the exploitation of the dead. Despite the controversies surrounding the practice, ghost marriages remain a testament to the enduring power of love and the unbreakable bonds of family in Chinese culture. As the renowned Chinese author Lu Xun once wrote, "The living are haunted by the dead, and the dead are haunted by the living." This sentiment is perhaps nowhere more evident than in the tradition of ghost marriages, where the boundaries between life and death are blurred, and love is believed to transcend the grave. In the words of the Tang dynasty poet Li Shangyin, "Though we are parted by the river of heaven, our love will endure for 1,000 autumns." As the Chinese proverb goes, marriage is a union of two families, but a ghost marriage is a union of two souls. The Last Supper of the Soul, unveiling the macabre tradition of sin-eating in Europe. In the shadowy corners of European history, a macabre and peculiar custom once thrived, a practice that blurred the lines between the sacred and the profane. Sin-eating, a ritual where a designated individual would consume a meal over a corpse to absorb the deceased's sins, has long captivated the imaginations of historians and folklorists alike. This ancient tradition, with its roots deeply entangled in the mists of time, offers a haunting glimpse into the beliefs and fears that shaped the lives of our ancestors. As the Welsh historian Peter Stead once remarked, the sin-eater is a reminder of the darkness that once haunted the human soul. The origins of sin-eating remain shrouded in mystery, but the practice is believed to have emerged in the British Isles during the Middle Ages. In a time when the Catholic Church held sway over the lives and deaths of the populace, the fear of dying with unconfessed sins weighed heavily upon the minds of the faithful. The sin-eater, often a poor or marginalized member of society, would be summoned to the home of the recently deceased, where they would perform their grim ritual in exchange for a meager fee. One of the earliest recorded references to sin-eating can be found in the writings of the English antiquarian John Aubrey, who, in the late 17th century, described the custom as being practiced in Herefordshire, Shropshire, and Wales. The sin-eater would enter the room where the corpse lay, a solemn figure draped in black. Upon a plate placed on the dead person's chest, a simple meal of bread and salt would be arranged. In some regions, a cup of ale or wine would also be provided. The sin-eater would then consume the food and drink, symbolically taking upon themselves the sins of the departed. As they ate, they would recite a prayer or incantation, such as the one recorded in Shropshire, England, in the early 19th century. "I give easement and rest now to thee, dear man. Come not down the lanes or in our meadows, and for thy peace I pawn my own soul. Amen." This chilling invocation, with its implications of spiritual sacrifice, underscores the gravity of the sin-eater's role. One of the most famous accounts of sin-eating comes from the English village of Ratby, Leicestershire. In 1774, the local sin-eater, Richard Munslow, was called upon to perform his duties for a farmer named Thomas Sketchley. According to the local legend, as Munslow consumed the bread and ale over Sketchley's corpse, he declared, "I give easement and rest now to thee, dear man. Come not down the lanes or in our meadows, and for thy peace I pawn my own soul." This chilling tale has become a staple of English folklore, a testament to the enduring fascination with this morbid custom. Munslow's story has been retold countless times, inspiring works of fiction such as the novel The Sin-Eater's Daughter by Melinda Salisbury. As the practice of sin-eating spread throughout the British Isles, it took on different forms and rituals. In Wales, the sin-eater would place a wooden plate on the corpse's chest with a piece of bread in the centre and a coin on top. The sin-eater would then take the coin as payment, consume the bread and drink a cup of ale, thereby absolving the deceased of their sins. In Scotland, the sin-eater would sit on a stool by the corpse's head, eating a piece of bread and washing it down with a bowl of beer. These regional variations reflect the deep-rooted nature of the custom, which adapted to the unique beliefs and traditions of each community. The Scottish poet James Hogg, in his 1824 novel The Private Memoirs and Confessions of a Justified Sinner, vividly described a sin-eating ritual. The bread and wine were handed around, and each person, as he took them, uttered the words, "May all the sins of the deceased be forgiven." Despite its widespread practice, sin-eating was never officially sanctioned by the Church. In fact, many religious authorities condemned the custom as a form of superstition and even a type of necromancy. The Reverend William Bingley, writing in his North Wales, 1804, described sin-eating as a superstitious custom that was a relic of popery. This tension between the official doctrine of the Church and the folk beliefs of the people reflects the complex relationship between religion and magic in pre-modern Europe. The Church's opposition to sin-eating is echoed in the words of the 18th century Welsh clergyman William Wirt. "The practice of sin-eating is a vile and abominable custom, a heathenish and superstitious rite which ought to be utterly abolished and suppressed. As the Age of Enlightenment swept across Europe in the 18th century, bringing with it new ideas about religion, science, and society, the practice of sin-eating began to decline. The rise of Protestantism, with its emphasis on individual salvation and direct communication with God, rendered the concept of sin-eating obsolete in many areas. Moreover, the increasing influence of medical science and the growing awareness of the importance of hygiene made the idea of consuming food over a corpse seem not only superstitious, but also dangerous. By the mid-19th century, sin-eating had largely disappeared from the British Isles, though isolated instances were reported as late as the 1920s in the Welsh village of Cwmcarven. Despite its gradual disappearance, the legacy of sin-eating has left an indelible mark on European folklore and literature. Writers such as Sir Walter Scott, Thomas Hardy, and James Joyce have all referenced the custom in their works, ensuring that the memory of this macabre practice lives on in the popular imagination. As the English poet William Barnes wrote in his 1869 poem, The Vale of the Morning, "And still the sin-eater plies his trade, where the grave is fresh and the corpse is laid." The sin-eater has also inspired contemporary works such as the 2003 novel The Sin-Eater by Alice Thomas Ellis and the 2017 film The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which features a sin-eating ritual as a central plot element. Today, the practice of sin-eating is largely consigned to the annals of history, a relic of a bygone age when the fear of damnation loomed large in the minds of the faithful. As the Italian poet Dante Alighieri wrote in his immortal Divine Comedy, the darkest places in hell are reserved for those who maintain their neutrality in times of moral crisis. The sin-eater, in their own macabre way, sought to light a candle against that darkness, offering a final hope of redemption to those who feared the judgment of the afterlife. Acres of decay, the grim reality of body farms in the quest for justice. In the quiet corners of rural America, a macabre but crucial scientific endeavor is taking place. Nestled among the rolling hills and dense forests, body farms have emerged as a vital tool in the pursuit of justice. These research facilities, where donated human remains are left to the mercy of the elements, have revolutionized the field of forensic science, providing invaluable insights into the mysterious process of decomposition. As the renowned forensic anthropologist Dr. Bill Bass once said, "The body farm is a laboratory where we can study the human body in all its stages of decomposition." The concept of body farms can be traced back to the early 1970s, when Dr. William Bass, a pioneer in the study of human decomposition, established the first facility of its kind at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. In 1981, Bass was called to examine a set of badly decomposed remains found in a wooded area. Initially believing the remains to be ancient, he soon realized they belonged to a recently deceased individual. This experience highlighted the need for a better understanding of human decomposition in various environments. With this in mind, Bass set out to create a place where donated bodies could be studied in a controlled setting, mimicking the various conditions in which a corpse might be found in real-life crime scenes. Since its inception, the University of Tennessee Anthropological Research Facility, affectionately known as the Body Farm, has become a mecca for forensic scientists worldwide. Spread across a secluded 2-acre plot, the facility houses an array of human remains in various stages of decay. Some bodies are left exposed to the sun and rain, while others are buried in shallow graves or submerged in water. Each scenario provides valuable data on how different environmental factors affect the decomposition process. In one notable experiment, Bass and his team studied the effects of a car trunk on decomposition by placing a donated body inside a vehicle. The results of this study have since been used in numerous criminal investigations. One of the most high-profile cases that highlighted the importance of body farm research was the 1993 murder of Marta Henson in Tacoma, Washington. The victim's body was discovered in a heavily wooded area, and investigators were initially baffled by the advanced state of decomposition. It was only through the expertise of Dr. Bass and his colleagues who had conducted extensive studies on the impact of different environments on human remains, that they were able to determine the time of death accurately. This crucial piece of information led to the arrest and conviction of the murderer, showcasing the real-world application of body farm research. As Bass stated in his book Death's Acre, the body farm allows us to apply the knowledge we gain directly to real cases, helping to solve crimes and bring closure to families. Over the years, other body farms have emerged across the United States, each contributing to the growing body of knowledge in forensic science. The Forensic Anthropology Center at Texas State University, established in 2008 by Dr. Daniel Westcott, is one such facility. Located on a 26-acre plot in San Marcos, Texas, the center has been instrumental in studying the effects of the harsh Texas climate on human decomposition. In 2015, researchers at the facility were able to help identify the remains of a missing person who had been buried in a shallow grave for over 2 years, providing closure to the grieving family. Dr. Westcott emphasized the importance of this work, stating, "Everybody tells a story, and it's our job to decipher that story and give a voice to the voiceless." The research conducted at body farms has not only aided in solving crimes, but has also shed light on the intricacies of the human decomposition process. By studying the various stages of decay, from the initial bloating and discoloration to the eventual skeletonization, scientists have gained a deeper understanding of the complex interplay between a corpse and its environment. This knowledge has been crucial in estimating the post-mortem interval, a critical factor in criminal investigations. In a landmark study conducted at the University of Tennessee Body Farm in the 1990s, Bass and his colleagues were able to establish a timeline for human decomposition based on the presence of certain insect species. This study has since become a cornerstone of forensic entomology. However, the work carried out at body farms is not for the faint of heart. The sights and smells of decomposing human remains can be overwhelming even for seasoned researchers. Dr. Anna Doty, the director of the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia, once described her experience at a body farm as a sensory assault. She recalled the pungent odor of decay that permeated the air and the unsettling sight of bodies in various states of decomposition, a stark reminder of the grim reality of death. Despite the challenges, Doty remains committed to her work, stating, "It's not an easy job, but it's an incredibly important one. The knowledge we gain from studying these bodies can make a real difference in the world." The dedicated scientists who work at body farms understand that their research has the power to bring closure to families, to bring killers to justice, and to shed light on the mysteries of death. As Dr. Dorney Stedman, the director of the Forensic Anthropology Center at the University of Tennessee, once said, "The work we do here is not just about science, it's about providing answers and helping families find peace." This sentiment is echoed by the donors themselves, many of whom see their final act as a way to give back to society. In a letter left by a donor to the Texas State Body Farm, the individual wrote, "I hope that by donating my body, I can help make the world a safer and more just place, even in death." In the words of true crime author Mary Roach, who explored the world of body farms in her book Stiff, the story of the body farm is the story of science at its most noble and its most gruesome. It's a story of the extraordinary lengths to which people will go in the name of justice and the pursuit of knowledge. As we delve into the shadows of history, exploring the enigmatic and sometimes eerie customs surrounding death, be it through the serene stillness of death masks, the solemn duty of sin-eaters, or the poignant promises of Chinese ghost marriages, we've traversed a realm where the line between the living and the departed blurs. These rituals, steeped in the deepest of human emotions and traditions, offer a glimpse into the myriad ways our ancestors sought to honor, remember, and sometimes continue the bonds with those who've passed. It is said, death is not the opposite of life, but a part of it. As we bid adieu to these tales of bygone eras and the fascinating customs that accompanied the final farewell, let us remember that in every whisper of the past, there lies wisdom for the living. History teaches us that in the end, It's love, memory, and the rituals that bind us, weaving the intricate dance between life and death. Thank you for journeying with us through the veil of history. May the stories of old kindle a light of curiosity and understanding in your heart. Until we meet again, cherish the tales that unite us across time, and remember, in the grand tapestry of existence, we are all but threads in the eternal story of life and death. Farewell.